Talk a little bit about the basics of balance while standing both on two legs and one, but also I should point out that tree pose isn't really a basic or simple pose. And why is that? The simple answer is, in tree pose, one leg is pressing against the other. It could be a fairly relaxed connection, or it could be a fairly strong connection where you're using this leg and the foot to press against each other. But in either way, the sensation with the foot away from the leg like this is actually different than with the foot pressing into with the opposite lifted foot pressing into the thigh. It actually, when you're pressing a foot into the thigh, it actually changes the muscle activation in this leg. And because you're using this leg to control your balance, that can actually make balance more difficult. So one thing that you might want to try to do if you find balance in one leg on one side difficult is actually try balancing without the legs touching and see if you still have a problem. Now, one of the first things that I like to do when I'm teaching balance is, and this is something that you do, is to practice shifting your weight forward and backwards on both feet. So you could shift your weight forward just enough that you feel your toes pressed into the floor. And you may find if say your big toe presses down with more pressure than your little toe, try rotating your shins outwards a little bit more. If you find your outer toes are pressing down more easily than your inner toe, rotate your shins inwards. Try and find that rotation, the amount of rotation that allows you to press all of your toes down with even pressure. Now, another thing that you can do is try shifting your weight back, try balancing on your heels. And what you may notice, if you shift your weight forward, feel your toes pressing down, and then shift your weight back, notice your toes get light on the floor, and even try lifting the fronts of your feet. Balance is actually a little bit more difficult, as opposed to shifting your weight forward so that your toes press down, so your toes are 4 feet pressed down, lift your heels. You may find this is actually a little bit easier because you're balanced between 2 points, 2 lines in front of your feet, and your toes are pressing down with almost the same amount of pressure. That can help keep you balanced. If you're balanced on your heels, if your weight is over your heels, because you're on a single point of balance, their balance is a lot more difficult. You'll have to use other parts of your body to compensate. So one of the first suggestions when you're doing tree pose, if you have difficulty balancing, shift your weight forward. Feel your toes pressing down. Rotate the shin inwards or outwards so all 5 toes press down with even pressure. You don't have to lift the heel. You can lean forward enough that your toes press down, and you can use your toes then to help you balance. Now, if your foot is a little bit floppy and you find it difficult to keep rotation where all 5 toes are pressing down with even pressure, then probably what you need to work on is ankle strength. So it might help to practice, say, balancing on one foot, rotating your shin in or out. There may be some muscle tightness in the hips or some muscle imbalances in the hips which affect your ability to control your feet. But for now, I'd suggest just trying to play around with your foot. See if you can make your foot, find a position where inside and outside edge of the front of the foot press down with even pressure, and your toes press down with even pressure, and see if you can control that or maintain that even without doing tree pose. So of course, try that on both feet. I tend to have difficulty with my left foot, and you notice my knee is slightly bent. Try it with your knee bent first. Try to control your foot, ankle, and toes. See if you can make your foot rigid. Another problem that I've personally experienced with balancing is my left outer foot felt a little bit weak. And so I actually had to practice making the outer foot rigid, and that could involve turning the foot this way or that, just so I get more control of the foot. So you're going to have to play around with that a little bit if you continue to have problems. But anyway, so shift your weight forward, not too far forward, just enough that you can use your toes to balance. Rotate your shin in or out so that your foot and ankle feel strong. You may find, and try that on both feet. And an exercise you could do, maybe try rotating both feet out, position where the toes can press down with even pressure. Press your toes down, shift to one leg, try and keep this leg active, and then go back to center again. Reactivate the feet and toes, shift to the other leg. See if you can, and do it slowly, see if you can make the feet strong and stable. And if you have problems with one foot, I have problems with my left foot, you can maybe practice more to that side. Rather than just doing like this, yeah, whatever, I can do it. Focus on feeling your foot. So shift your weight, so maybe rotate your shins, press your feet, slowly shift onto your chosen leg. And see if you notice where your foot starts to feel weak. Like here, just when I reach about this halfway point, I feel my foot sort of giving in a bit. So you could maybe just stop at that point, back away, go back to center, and then go back onto the foot. See if you can change the way that you're using the foot so that it feels strong and stable. Now another point with tree pose, so obviously the foot is turned out. An exercise I like to use is instead of contacting the foot like so, so I'll break it down simply. What you could do in tree pose, start with the foot on the thigh. I've got it fairly low here, could be as low, this low. And what you can practice doing first of all is lifting the hip. So this foot is stable. I'm going to lift this side hip and then relax, lift and then relax. And then what I could do, I'm speeding it up here for you, lift the hip and then try lifting the knee. Then put the foot back, relax, lift the hip, lift the knee, foot back, relax. And as you do that, you can work at lifting the hips slowly higher and then repeat on the other side. And ideally what this teaches you is if you've got one side is easier than the other, it might be a problem with the hips. And this exercise gives you a chance to feel both sides of the hip, feel whether, how does this side feel? How does this side feel? And you don't even have to have the foot on the inner thigh, you could just have it on the floor. Start with this exercise. Notice where the action's coming from. Is it coming from this waist or is it coming from this hip? And I'd suggest where you want it to come from is the standing leg hip. So once you've got that action, try to slowly place your foot against the wall, against the inner thigh. So rather than just plopping it there and going straight up into tree pose, make this foot rigid. Again, so shift your weight forward, toes pressed down. Make this hip strong. So lift this hip, place the foot against the thigh, and then slowly relax it down. So as you relax this hip down, the leg might press into this foot with even pressure. Now what you could try doing is pressing this foot against the inner thigh. So slowly press and then relax. And then what you could also do at the same time is press the thigh against the foot. So it's like you're pressing your hands together. It's like you're using your inner thigh against your foot. So slowly and smoothly press your thigh against your foot and then relax. Press and then relax. So in this case you're using this inner thigh and some of the hip muscles of this leg. So what you're actually doing is gaining control, helping learn control of your hips and your foot. And ideally what you'll find is if there are differences in sensation between the sides, that's something that you can focus on and explore while doing tree poses on different sides so that you can work on making both sides reasonably equal. So I've talked a little bit about the hips in tree pose. Another problem that maybe, because there's a muscle called the psoas which attaches from the inner thigh, crosses the front of the pelvis, attaches to the low back. If there are any problems in the hip, that will be transferred to the lower back via the psoas. So there may, if you've got hip imbalances, then chances are you've got lower back imbalances. And what that may result in is the rib cage being slid to one side or the other. So another exercise you could practice while doing tree pose is perhaps sliding the rib cage to one side relative to the pelvis or to the other. There may also be rotation, so another thing that you could practice is turning your rib cage relative to your pelvis in one direction, and then turning it to the other, and then try it on the other side. See if you notice any differences. So again, slide to one side, slide to the other, turn to one side, turn to the other. Repeat all of those a few times. See, I'm not so good at this pose either. This is my not so good leg. Also, when you're doing these sort of actions, as you explore, so now I'm fully to that side, now I'm fully to the other side, look for the central position where it feels balanced. Likewise, after twisting, look for the center position where it feels balanced. try that on both sides. So not just focusing on your hips, but also your lower back to find a position where, to find the posture where both doing tree pose on both sides feel even. Final trick, a couple of final tricks. So start from the ground up, stabilize your foot, maybe press your foot against your inner thigh, and then from there work at lengthening your spine upwards. As you lengthen your spine, that pulls the rib cage up away from your hips, and that will automatically add some tension to your abs. So that more or less unifies the upper body. So instead of separate pieces flying all over the place, which is hard to control, just by lifting your ribs up away from your waist, you're making this more or less one unified unit with a single unified center of gravity, which will be easier to control. And then with your spine long, only after you've got the spine long, you could try reaching your arms out to the side. So again, rather than being super strong and rather than being flaccid, maybe just try to make your arms feel long. So in this position, you might find it easier to balance. Then keep the arms feeling long as you slowly reach over your head. And one point there, so that the pose feels more comfortable, and this will take some practice, but try and make the back of your body feel just as open as the front of your body. Here I'm talking about the torso. So open the front, open the back, reach your arms out, make your arms feel long so that there's sensation in the arms, and then slowly reach your arms up. And again, if you're having problems balancing, don't just try and reach your arms suddenly up. Do it slowly, notice the changes, the sensations in your foot. If you fall over, that's fine. Repeat it, work at going up slowly so that you can use your foot to feel the shifts in balance so that you can compensate before you fall out of balance. That's just a quick overview of balance. If there's more interest, I can go into more detailed videos. Please let me know in the comments, and thank you very much for watching. Namaste. Hopefully that was helpful.